Hello and welcome back to TechRadar. My name is Adam Fajestica. I'm the senior staff writer at TechRadar.
And I am Matt Phillips, TechRadar's video producer, and Adam was lucky enough to play 4 hours. Was it 4 hours of Assassin's Creed Odyssey early?
It was 3 hours.
3 hours, fair enough. And I have a load of questions about it. We went to social media and asked for your questions as well. So if you didn't get a chance to input your questions, then you should go follow us on like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and all those things, so you can ask us questions about the next game we talk about or the next device we talk about. But I've collated all the questions. We're going to go through them and chat Assassin's Creed Odyssey for you. All the gameplay you're seeing is work in progress, so bear that in mind. And it's also Adam on the sticks, so apologies for his terrible play. Insert clip of Adam catching himself on fire here. Exactly. Which I saw when I briefly looked through the footage yesterday. I was like, oh wow, that was mad skills.
Did you see me fail at that siege a couple of times to the point where the demoist was like, I'll just skip you forward, because it had a really brutal checkpoint in my defense, really brutal.
I didn't see that, but I'm sure the people at home will revel in seeing that just now.
Yeah.
So maybe I think it's worth then touching on quickly Assassin's Creed games in general, how you feel about them, which ones have you played before, which ones have you liked, which ones have you not, to give everybody a little bit of a baseline of where you're at with it.
Yeah, I was there for the first Assassin's Creed. All those, when was that? That was many years ago now.
That was a long time.
It was a revolution at the time, wasn't it, in terms of graphics, in terms of levels of fidelity and animation. The one area it fell drastically short on for me was always gameplay. I never found them that fun to play.
Right.
If I'm honest, beautiful to look at. Really, you know, with the parkour and the free running, again, introduced loads of mechanics which other games would riff on. But I never really clicked with Assassin's Creed until Assassin's Creed 2, which for me is still my favorite, because that kind of just took all the goodness from Assassin's Creed and really made it good. Then, I have a problem with Assassin's Creed because it became obviously annualized. Every year was a new one, slightly different settings, and for me it became very repetitive and very monotonous, and I skipped quite a few of them. I played them for a little bit and then I just kind of left them. So I haven't actually played Odyssey and Origins, believe it or not, because even though they did change Assassin's Creed for the better, definitely, and it's the first time I've actually looked at Assassin's Creed again and gone, wow, I actually want to play this game. But I still was waiting for the right setting. And I'm pleased to say Assassin's Creed Valhalla is definitely the right setting for me. And I'm probably going to pick that one up.
Ooh, intriguing stuff. So I'm kind of in the opposite boat to you. I loved the kind of first half of Assassin's Creed, if you like 1, 2, Brotherhood, all of these ones. I loved them all. And yeah, absolutely adored them, played the hell out of them. When they then made the switch to Origins, that's where I fell off.
Really?
Kind of, the sort of RPG mechanics of sort of grinding out and it all being about the next bit of gear you get really turned me off to it. And the fact that it wasn't telling a particularly cohesive story anymore, and this kind of happened in Black Flag and stuff as well. It was much more about exploring this open world than it was about this weird sci-fi story with an animus and going back in time.
And I have to ask the question, did you enjoy the animus side of things? Because for me, that was always weirdly one of the weakest parts of Assassin's Creed, because I just preferred to immerse myself in the historic setting, in the world, and then whenever it would kick me out into the animus, into the modern day, I couldn't stand that.
Yeah, I totally understand that. But yeah, and I think you're right. Some games did it better than others. And yeah, sort of 2 and stuff, when they actually started introducing combat into those non-anima sections, I thought was like kind of a cool idea. But yeah, okay. Those animus out of the anima sections were never fantastic. But I enjoyed the story elements of that at least, right? So yeah, that's kind of what I enjoyed about it. So yeah, well, like I say, Origins really kind of turned me off to the Assassin's Creed franchise.
That's interesting. Yeah.
My girlfriend, coincidentally, is the opposite again. So she picked it up with Origins and absolutely loves these games now and is currently playing Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And a lot of the questions we got on social media were about how Valhalla compares to Odyssey. A lot of people online, obviously, I'm sure you've seen the leaked footage at this point. A lot of people saying that looks like a reskinned Odyssey. Yeah, so maybe you can chat on that a little bit and why this Assassin's Creed, I guess, appeals to you more than Odyssey ever did.
So like I kind of touched on before, for me, Assassin's Creed is very much, it's built around the experience of the setting. We can all agree on that. So, for example, with Assassin's Creed 2, you had Ezio, you had, the Italian whatever time period that was, but they do a really good job of bringing you into that universe. So, example, Origins for me never really appealed because I'm not a huge fan of ancient Egypt and all that kind of stuff. But Valhalla, yes, I think it is fair to say that, again, Ubisoft has now got into the part of going, okay, we've revolutionized Assassin's Creed a bit. We've got a system which most people seem to be liking, a bit more of a fan of than the originals, apart from you, obviously. So how can we just, how can we just like reiterate upon it and just refine it? So it's not, you're not going to play Assassin's Creed Valhalla and be like, wow, this is completely new. This is something I've never played before. The mechanics are so different. Fundamentally, it's still going to be very similar to the first two games. Yes, there's tweaks and changes here and there. For example, one of the biggest changes is they've introduced like a stamina bar now for combat. So you have to kind of, I'm right in thinking that wasn't in the other two. I mean, it was pointed out to me that it wasn't.
Right.
That kind of changes combat up a little bit because it's less about just spamming attacks. And also your enemies have stamina as well. So you've got to look for more openings. So the combat, which I've heard been criticized before, is a little bit more engaging. It's still, I still found it, I will admit, a little bit repetitive, and you do come across enemies which are very like archetypal, as in like, this is your strong enemy, this is like your quick enemy, and those kind of gameplay mechanics are great at the start because you're like, oh, it's challenging, it's new, but when you see the same kind of like skin of the character, the same moveset, it's going to be, my worry is it will become repetitive. But the thing that I think Valhalla achieves really well is it makes you feel like a Viking. And that is surely the goal of most Assassin's Creed games. If you're trying to convince someone you're in a historic setting and you're playing as this character, if it doesn't feel like that universe or that timeline, there's no point to it for me, because the gameplay has always been kind of the icing on a really convincing world. I mean, that's my opinion. Some people might love the Assassin's Creed gameplay and think it's flawless. Personally not, but I do think they've come a long way.
Yeah, interesting stuff. So maybe then you can give us a little bit of context for the gameplay people are seeing. Where in the game are you being dropped in here? Is this kind of a fresh, new save, new game? Or are you being dropped some hours in? How does that work?
So we are playing, or I was playing on a small part of the map, it seemed, which is like Norwich.
Right.
So it's still expansive, as you can guess. In terms of how far I was in, that wasn't really explained, although I had quite a few things unlocked in the skill tree, and it seemed like a lot of the early character development had already been done. So it's kind of like taken on face value, like, this is your character, this is Eivor. You know, there was none of that. It wasn't really a prologue of any sort. So the first mission was, to be honest, fantastic, because that's when, you know, you're riding your horse, you go into a village, you pick up your first quest, and it is basically, we need you to take over this town. And the way that happens is just great, because you call your longbow, which is one of the ways your transportation methods in the game, along with horse riding, and the music starts playing and the drums start going, and then you're riding in and you just like crash onto the shoreline, and then you just lay siege on this little castle village which you want to take over. And that in itself was just so satisfying to play. Just this idea of like, you've got your whole crew, and every single member of your like team or whatever, they get out the boat, they all start running in, and the combat takes place all around you, and you can help out and influence it, obviously, and then you have your own little personal mini battles in that. So that really captured the Viking feeling of like, I'm going to go plunder this place, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take all their treasure, and then now it's ours. And that for me was key to get that right, and that worked really well. Then after I did that, I had to do a few more story missions. So I think I attended a wedding, which was very interesting. Did some climbing, found the old staple in every Assassin's Creed game, which is like climb a huge building and then synchronize it with the world and jump off, which I don't know, like we've been doing that for years now, but it's still nice.
Yeah.
And then did another massive siege with like a little boss fight, which was quite interesting. That was surprisingly fun. I thought it was going to, again, be a little bit repetitive and the same thing, but there's depth there, and you've got a lot of abilities which I had unlocked. So it's not just about your usual attacks. You can, like, for example, make your axe poisonous. You can do like a really dramatic shield charge. You can do like stomp attacks. So it's kind of mixing up those abilities as well as your regular combat. And then the rest of the game was basically just go around and explore, see what little mini quests I can find, treasures, just emergent gameplay kind of things that just happen naturally. And yeah, I honestly did really enjoy it.
Brilliant.
Which I wasn't expecting, to be honest. I went in with quite low expectations, but I think they've got a solid game there. But again, if you are tired, if you've got through Origins and if you've got through Odyssey, and you're like, I don't think I could play Assassin's Creed again, unless you are seriously invested in Viking lore and you love Vikings the program and Lagertha's your favorite shield maiden and Ragnar Lothbrok and all that, then yeah, I'd maybe wait until it's on sale.
Sure, that makes sense. You know, one interesting thing you talked about there is this kind of idea of feeling like a Viking, right? And like charging and sieging a town and stuff. To me, that immediately hits me of like, that doesn't sound very much like an assassin. So is that sort of stealth gameplay? Obviously, it's still in there, but how much of that did you get involved in, and how did you feel about that?
So yeah, the stealth gameplay has been dramatically improved since I last played Assassin's Creed, because that's one area that I always really didn't enjoy. I always felt the stealth was a bit wishy-washy and it wasn't very fully realized. You don't really obviously need stealth when you're sieging a village. Like that's the element of surprise is long gone. But for example, like the mini quests that I encountered across the world, stealth is a very viable option, and it's obviously very effective.
Right.
So you can still crouch, you can still crawl into bushes, you can still use your wrist blade to take out enemies. If you jump off a cliff or a building, for example, instead of just doing an automatic kill as well, there's like a little mini game, so you've got to time it right. But stealth is very effective if you are, for example, taking out like a camp of bandits and little enemies, but you won't be using stealth, as far as I'm aware, when you're sieging, because everyone knows you're there, everyone knows you're coming.
Yeah,
it is there. It is there. There's still the assassin's element in the game.
Well, that makes sense. I think then it's time for us to get into some of our user-submitted questions. Fantastic stuff. And again, there's kind of a theme that runs through this. You know, our first one's from Wayne Davis from Facebook, and he says, it looks a lot like Odyssey. And this will be a theme that reemerges quite a few times, I think. Yeah. But he's wondering, is it grindy? You know, this was a kind of criticism of Odyssey, that they had these XP boosts that you could purchase if you wanted to sort of progress in the game further and level up quicker and get to the story missions quicker, which a lot of people didn't like. But did you see any evidence of that in Valhalla, and how necessary do you think it might be, obviously from your limited gameplay time?
Yeah, so in terms of XP boosters, I didn't see anything like that. It wasn't a fully fledged enough build that they're going to put microtransactions in there. For me, I really hope there isn't, because that is a deliberate developer decision. If you're making a game deliberately slow to progress, so if you know that players have to do so many things to slowly level up, and then you go, hey, but you can get quicker if you buy an XP, that's really bad game design for me. It's kind of like a predatory game design. I really don't like that. Will it be in there? Time will tell. Did it feel grindy? Not really, because again, I was quite involved in the world. You know, Eivor, I played as the male and the female character, both seemed pretty convincing, although the female character didn't seem to be as expressionate as the male character. I don't know if that was a bug or if they hadn't finished designing that, because again,
it's still a work in progress. Yeah,
exactly. But that was a bit disappointing. I really hope they flesh her out a little bit more, because that would be my preferred way to play. I mean, again, touching on the Viking series on Amazon, love Lagertha. If I can play or be anywhere close to Lagertha, that's great. But yeah, the little missions, they were nicely spread out. They were fun to do. It's one of those games where there's hours and hours of gameplay. So will you encounter that kind of quest twice, or a version of it, or a little tweak on it? If they can keep it fresh, which is very difficult to do in those games, I don't think it'll feel too grindy, especially if you're invested in the characters. However, if there's XP boosters in the game, it's going to be grindy. It's been designed to be grindy. So yeah, we'll have to hopefully wait and see. And yeah, no XP boosters, please, would be great.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned sort of the side quests being interesting that you experienced, but how many of them are going to be sort of duplicates or reskins of one another. A lot of people have been drawing parallels between this and The Witcher. I think sort of the horse riding that was seen in the setting and this kind of thing. A lot of people are saying these are kind of looking like similar games. And one thing that turned me off in The Witcher was the conversations, right? Like you'd kind of go into these conversations and Geralt would stand there like a robot and the person would stand opposite you like a robot and you'd talk and it would feel quite bland. And from what I've seen of my girlfriend playing Odyssey, it's relatively similar in Odyssey. So I'm wondering, how fluid did those conversations feel? I know you mentioned that the facial acting on the female Eivor wasn't fantastic, but it's work in progress, as we know. But does it feel a bit more fluid and a bit more alive this time?
Long story short, no. I think it feels worse than The Witcher, and The Witcher 3 was obviously made a while ago.
Yeah,
I think
of course.
The Witcher 3, obviously, it's never been as engaging for conversations as, for example, a game like Mass Effect, which really, invested heavily on facial animations and stuff like that. Assassin's Creed Valhalla very much looked, again, early build and all that, but still, I can't see it being too much different when it comes out. It very much felt like a current gen game, which is trying to adopt more features like that. Yes, you have conversations, you have dialogue options you can choose. If you're looking for great facial animations and really realistic characters, you're not going to find it in this game, for me. It's not that the conversations were bad. The voice acting's really strong, which, if anything, makes the character models and the facial animations look a little bit basic.
Sure.
And again, the expressions that Eivor, and I think it's pronounced like that anyway, that they make aren't, again, it's not particularly like, wow, that's really, I can tell he's delighted, I can tell he's sad, I can tell they're angry. It's just very basic. So it's fine. It wasn't too egregious, but is it going to hold up to some of these other games? No.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think the bigger these games get, right, the harder those sorts of things become. The more characters you have with voice lines, the more you need to animate and all these kind of things becomes more of a burden in comparison to something like Last of Us, which really just has kind of a handful of characters that can really pour the time into and really make that fantastic to watch as well as play. Let's move on then to another question we had. This from Emma Garside, my girlfriend, who had to chip in with a question on Facebook.
Brilliant.
She's playing Odyssey at the moment. One of her favorite features is the bird that I can't even remember the name of the bird. You fly off as the bird, you take control of the bird, you can tag enemies. Obviously, in the cinematic trailer, we saw maybe a hint that this gameplay would be in Valhalla as well, but did you experience that gameplay in there?
Yes. So as I was fumbling to get used to the controls, I activated the hawk or the bird or whatever, whatever it is, and that's in there. And I really like that mechanic. I think it's really impressive on a technological standpoint. Yeah, you can fly around the village and you can spot certain, points of interest and tag enemies. I'm sure you can. Not that I used it for that. Whether it will be, again, like we touched on earlier with the stealth, whether it will be as important in this game,
sure,
or as widely used, it might be better for just seeking out secrets and stuff in the environment. That we'll have to wait and see. But it is there, and it seems to function just as well as it did in the previous games. So she Brilliant can fly. Stuff. She can take flight again.
She can take flight. Brilliant stuff. Then let's go to Twitter now. Wilmar04 says, how does the time to kill feel? Obviously, we talked a little bit about this, that kind of move into Origins and the more RPG thing, and you're hitting people now and numbers are popping off of them. They have these really big health bars, which was never a thing in sort of the older Assassin's Creed. So how does that feel, I guess?
They have health bars, and each enemy does take a bit of a beating. As I found out on my fourth try of one of the sieges, they hang around longer than probably lower ranked enemies should. And I was encouraged to use the abilities, but obviously you can use 2, and then you have to do enough like damage and deflecting. Parrying is a massive part of the combat. If you can't parry, if you've not got very good reactions, it's quite a generous window to parry, but you need to do that if you're going to survive. The combat, so I'd say the time to kill is quite high. It's Dark Souls-esque in terms of they really want you to feel like every encounter you have is satisfying. But the problem is when you are facing the same kind of enemy, the same kind of character model, and you just want to push forward to the big boss fights or the little mini boss fights, I felt the time to kill was a touch long. I don't know what difficulty I was on. I don't know how well developed my character was at the time. And again, this was the first time I'd played Valhalla, so I was getting better as I went along.
Sure.
The combat was fun though. Like I didn't find it to be just poorly designed. It's satisfying enough. Parrying felt good. Executions are good. The abilities are quite impressive, and you've got a lot of room to experiment there, especially as you level up your character with the skill trees. Mm-hmm. But you're not going to be like one-shotting people unless you go stealth, where you can take them out in one hit. You are going to have to. If someone comes to you with a shield, you might have to break the shield. You'll have to wear their stamina down. You can stun enemies. There's like little interactive not quick time events, but you will get like a button prompt. Like say if you knock an enemy over, then you'll have a chance to like stomp them into the mud until they're dead. So you really want to take advantage of those. Otherwise they're just going to get back up again. And then then you go into the same song and dance. So time to kill, high.
Fair enough. Okay, and then we had two questions, the exact same question off two different people on Instagram, and I can't pronounce your names. I'll put a little thing that has your names in there. Wow. I'm not even going to try. But will we see, or did you see, I guess, Odin and Thor? And, we don't want to get too heavily into spoilers here, but we know Assassin's Creed can kind of venture into those gods and monsters type things. So did you see any evidence of that in your gameplay?
No. So... Okay. For the story modes that I played, it was very much character building in that universe. So it was my character interacting with other people she knew. But there was mention of famous Viking historical figures like Ragnar Lothbrok. He is mentioned in conversation. So whether those characters will be explored or expanded upon, we'll have to wait and see. But they're definitely mentioned in the world, which is quite nice. That maybe leads me to think that I don't know how much mythology side of it we'll see. As I can't imagine, Thor just turning up and throwing his axe around.
It's interesting. I think in Odyssey they had early on in Odyssey you're kind of hearing about this guy called the Cyclops, and people refer to him as Cyclops, and then you get there and it's just a big dude with an eye patch, right? And it's like, that's kind of clever. But then later on, in I think some of the DLCs, you end up fighting like Medusa and Minotaurs, and so they are all in there. So it wouldn't surprise me, I guess, if kind of in the late game we see these gods maybe around, or like you say,
I don't think it would make sense right at the start if they were just like, and now you're fighting for. It's the second mission of the game.
But it also wouldn't surprise me, right, if you kind of hear about Thor and then you get to him and he's just a big dude with a hammer or something, and that's kind of how they've decided to tackle that.
Yeah, that seems more likely.
Yeah, for sure. And then I guess we'll end out with our final question here from Twitter from Shane Rowe. What does Valhalla do that previous Assassin's Creed games didn't do? And I guess you've already touched on it a little bit, but why are you so interested in this game over the previous ones?
So again, that is quite a difficult question to answer, isn't it? Because everyone's played Assassin's Creed probably, but everyone has their favorites. They're all very similar, but very different at the same time. Brotherhood, I think was it Brotherhood that brought in the kind of like RTS real time.
Yeah, I think it was the one after Brotherhood, but I do know what you're talking about. It was almost tower defense. There was like a tower defense mode in it. Yeah,
absolutely. And I don't think any other Assassin's Creed games did that. And then we've moved into this more RPG based games. What Valhalla does well that previous Assassin's Creed maybe didn't is it has a historical setting and a very convincing one that I personally could spend a lot of time in. I think it really does come down to, again, it's not going to break the mold. It's not really going to do anything we haven't seen before. You're still jumping off buildings. You've still got your hawk. You've still got the combat, although slightly refined. Do you like Vikings? If you do, if you want to braid your hair and grow a big beard and plunge an axe into someone's chest and pull it out and then scream as you drink some mead or beer or whatever, it's going to be for you. If you don't like that, if you're still waiting for them to make an Assassin's Creed based in feudal Japan, please do that, Ubisoft. I will buy it day one. then it might not be for you. But everything that you love about Assassin's Creed is there.
Yeah.
Just an entirely new setting.
And interestingly, that you mentioned that feudal Japan setting, because of course Ghost of Tsushima is out next week, and we'll be doing a live review of that as well. So if you have questions for that, maybe drop them in the comments down here. Although I guess we kind of want to know what you think of Valhalla in these comment sections, but head over to our social media and drop questions over there so I can put them in that video review that we do with Gerald next week. Thank you so much for joining me, Adam. Is there anything else that you wanted to touch on before we jump out of here? I think we covered a lot of stuff, didn't we?
I think we got through most of it, yeah. And obviously, hopefully my gameplay doesn't look too amateur hour, but I was learning as I went, so give me a break. I'm a pro gamer. I am a pro gamer.
Exactly. Brilliant stuff. So yeah, thanks again for joining me, Adam. Please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and head over to techradar.com for all the latest tech news and reviews.